does not last in days, sometimes hours. Bread become moldy, apple slices turn brown, and bacteria multiply in yogurt. But you can find all of this food out on the shelf at the grocery store, hopefully unspoiled. Thanks to preservative. What exactly are preservatives? How do they help keep food edible? There are two major factors that cause food to go bad, such as microbes and oxidation. Microbes like bacteria and fungi invade food and feed off its nutrients. Some of these can cause diseases like diphtheria and botulism. Others just turn edibles into smelly, slimy, and moldy. However, preservative can prevent both types of deterioration. Before the invention of refrigerator, fungi and bacteria could damage the food. So, we found ways to create an uncomfortable environment for microbes. For example, fermentation of vegetables or fruit inhibits the growth of the microbes, and some bacteria can actually help. For thousands of years, people fermented food using bacteria that produce lactic acid or ethanol. The acid and ethanol turns perishable into longer-lasting food like sauerkraut, kimchi, and yogurt.
Are you guys ready to know what is fermentation? Let's take a look at the importance of the fermentation. Firstly, it can enhance the shelf life of the food. Second, make food becomes more digestible. Third, it can enhance the flavor. Fourth, it can reduce the toxicity of the substrate of the food. And lastly, biological enrichment of food substrate with protein. Types of fermentation. There are two types of fermentation, which is lactic acid fermentation and alcoholic fermentation. Lactic acid fermentation is a metabolic process by which glucose and other 6-carbon sugar are converted into cellular energy, and the metabolite lactate, which is lactic acid in solution. There are 3 microorganisms involved in lactic acid fermentation. Examples of food products in lactic acid fermentation is tempeh, kimchi, pickles, and yogurt. Next, we move on to the alcoholic fermentation. Alcoholic fermentation involves the breaking down of simple sugar to ethanol and carbon dioxide by the anaerobic pathway carried out by the yeast. This is the microorganism involved in alcoholic fermentation. The examples of food products of alcoholic fermentation is sourdough bread and red wine. Fermentation technique can be classified into 2 techniques, which are natural fermentation and controlled fermentation. Natural fermentation was implemented by Pak Ali to produce sirup madu. Natural fermentation is used when desirable and associated microorganisms are naturally present in the foods that we want to ferment. Thus, Pak Ali realizes that the fruits that he wants to ferment already contain microorganisms that involve in fermentation. Therefore, he only needs to provide suitable conditions to favor rapid growth of desirable microorganisms. For instance, acidic medium by adding vinegar to the fruits. The advantage of using this technique is that It creates unique flavors resulting from the metabolism of associated microorganisms of the food. However, the disadvantage is difficult to produce a consistent characteristics of the fermented foods since the number of desirable microorganisms are different from each other. Next, controlled fermentation. In contrast with natural fermentation, controlled fermentation does not contain desirable microorganisms in the food that we want to ferment. Thus, it needs to add high population of a pure culture of microorganisms. For instance, in the making of cheese, milk does not contain desirable microorganisms that involve in fermentation. Therefore, lactic acid bacteria is added to the milk in early process of cheese making. Fermentation changes the sugar to acid that causes the curd. The advantage of this technique is that it produces a product that have consistent characteristics since the microorganisms are in controlled condition. The disadvantage, it is hard to isolate the right strains in the first stage.